There was a little girl who lived with her parents in a quiet house at the edge of a small town. Her name was Elena. Elena was 7 years old. She was not very tall for her age, but her eyes were wide and curious, as if they were always searching for something more than what was right in front of her. She had soft brown hair that often fell into her face, and a habit of pushing it back impatiently whenever she became lost in thought. Every morning, Elena woke up before her parents. "Hello, friends. I'm going to tell you a story that will teach you a lot. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching my videos from." She liked the moment just before the house came alive. The silence that felt gentle rather than lonely. The sunlight would slowly crawl through the thin curtains of her bedroom, painting pale golden shapes on the walls. Elena would sit up in bed, hug her knees to her chest, and watch the dust float in the air like tiny invisible worlds. Her room was small, but it was hers. A wooden shelf held her books, most of them worn and reread many times. A stuffed rabbit with one missing button eye sat near her pillow. On the wall was a drawing she had made of her family, 3 stick figures holding hands under a giant sun. Elena slipped out of bed quietly, careful not to make the floorboards creak. She opened her window just a little and breathed in the morning air. It smelled like damp earth, leaves, and something warm she could never quite name. Elena's mother, Clara, worked from home as a seamstress. She spent long hours sitting by the window in the living room, her hands moving gracefully as she stitched fabric into dresses, shirts, and curtains for people in town. Clara spoke softly, but her presence filled the house. When she smiled, it felt as though everything would be all right. Elena's father, Daniel, was a school teacher. He taught history at the local secondary school. He left early every morning, carrying a worn leather bag and a quiet sense of responsibility. Daniel believed deeply in patience, honesty, and the power of stories. At night, he often told Elena tales about ancient places and brave people who changed the world in small but meaningful ways. Together, Clara and Daniel created a home that was simple but full of care. Breakfast was usually eaten at the small wooden table in the kitchen. Clara would hum softly as she poured tea, while Daniel read the newspaper. Elena would sit between them, swinging her legs and asking questions. Endless questions. Why do birds always wake up before people? Do trees remember the people who sit under them? What happens to places when nobody visits them anymore? Her parents never laughed at her questions. Sometimes they answered. Sometimes they said, "I don't know." And sometimes they said, "Let's find out together." Chapter 3. The House and the Yard. The house had been standing there for many years, longer than any of them could remember. Its walls were slightly uneven, and the paint had faded in places, but it felt sturdy and kind, like an old friend. Behind the house was a small yard. There was a crooked apple tree that only produced fruit every few years, a patch of grass that refused to grow evenly, and a narrow path of stones that Elena liked to follow as if it were a secret road. She often played there alone, inventing stories in her head. Sometimes she was an explorer mapping unknown lands. Other times, she was a guardian protecting invisible creatures from unseen dangers. The yard was where Elena felt most herself. One afternoon, while her mother worked and her father was still at school, Elena sat beneath the apple tree with a notebook on her lap. She was trying to write her own story, but the words felt shy, as if they were hiding from her. She sighed and closed the notebook. That was when she noticed something strange. Chapter 4. A Small Discovery. Near the fence, partially hidden by tall grass, Elena saw a shape she had never noticed before. It looked like a small wooden door set into the ground. Her heart beat faster. She stood up slowly and walked toward it. The door was old, its surface rough and darkened by time. There was no handle, only a small carved symbol in the center that looked like a circle inside a triangle. Elena knelt beside it. "Hello," she whispered, feeling a little silly. Nothing happened. She touched the door gently. It was warm, as if the earth beneath it was breathing. Footsteps approached behind her. "Elena," her mother called from the porch. "What are you doing?" Elena turned quickly. "I found something," she said. Clara came closer and looked at the spot where Elena was pointing. She frowned slightly. "I don't see anything," she said softly. Elena looked back. The door was gone. Only grass and soil remained. Elena's stomach tightened with confusion. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She wasn't sure if she had imagined it or if it had simply chosen not to be seen anymore. That night, Elena lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time, she wondered if the world was larger than she had ever been told, and whether her family's quiet life was standing at the edge of something much bigger. For the next 2 days, Elena could think of nothing else. She went back to the yard every morning and every afternoon. She searched near the fence, pushed aside the tall grass, and even dug gently into the soil with a small stick. But there was no sign of the wooden door. Still, she knew, deep inside, that she had not imagined it. On the third evening, the sky was cloudy and gray. Daniel had not yet returned from school, and Clara was inside finishing a dress for a customer. Elena sat alone in the yard, hugging her knees, feeling disappointed and a little foolish. "I guess you're gone," she murmured to the empty space near the fence. The ground shifted. Elena froze. Slowly, silently, the soil moved aside, and the small wooden door appeared once again, exactly where it had been before. Elena's breath caught in her throat. "I knew it," she whispered. This time, she did not call for her mother. She felt, without knowing why, that this was something meant only for her. The carved symbol on the door seemed to glow faintly. Elena reached out and pressed her fingers against it. The door opened. A soft, warm light spilled out, along with the smell of earth, rain, and old leaves. Elena leaned forward and peered inside. Instead of darkness, there was a narrow staircase leading downward. The steps were smooth, as if shaped by time rather than tools. Her heart raced. Every sensible thought told her to run back into the house, to wait for her parents, to forget this strange discovery. But another voice, quieter, stronger, told her that some things only appeared once, and only to those who were brave enough to follow. Elena stepped inside. The door closed gently behind her. At the bottom of the stairs was a wide underground room. The walls glowed softly, as though they held their own light. Roots from the apple tree twisted gently across the ceiling, pulsing slowly like veins, and in the center of the room stood a small figure. It was no taller than Elena's waist. Its skin looked like bark, its eyes like drops of amber. It watched her calmly, without fear. "You finally came," the figure said. Elena swallowed. "You can talk?" The figure smiled. "So can you." "My name is Rowan," the creature said. "I am the keeper of small things." Elena blinked. "What small things?" "Forgotten things," Rowan replied. "Quiet things. Things people stop noticing when they grow older." Rowan explained that beneath many old homes, gardens, and trees existed hidden places like this one. They were spaces where memories, hopes, and gentle promises settled into the earth. "Your family's house has been kind," Rowan said. "It has listened. That is why the door opened to you." Elena thought of her parents, their patience, their warmth, the way they treated her questions seriously. "Why me?" she asked. Rowan looked at her carefully. "Because you still listen." Chapter 8, A Growing Change. Over the following weeks, Elena returned to the hidden room many times. Rowan showed her small wonders, glowing seeds that grew into brief, beautiful plants and then vanished. Echoes of laughter from families long gone, quiet moments preserved like fragile glass. But something was wrong. The light in the underground room began to dim. Rowan grew quieter. "The world above is forgetting too much," Rowan finally admitted. "When places are rushed, ignored, or broken without care, the hidden spaces weaken." Elena felt a heavy knot form in her chest. "Can I help?" she asked. Rowan nodded slowly. "Yes, but you cannot do it alone." That evening, Elena sat at the kitchen table, twisting her fingers together. Clara noticed immediately. "Something's on your mind," her mother said gently. Elena took a deep breath. She told them everything. The door, the underground room, Rowan, the fading light. Daniel listened without interrupting. Clara reached for Elena's hand. When Elena finished, she waited for disbelief. Instead, Daniel said quietly, "I think some truths only sound impossible because we've forgotten how to hear them." Clara smiled softly. "Our house has always felt special," she said. Elena's eyes filled with relief. "You believe me?" "We believe you," Clara replied. The next day, Elena led her parents to the yard. This time, when she touched the symbol, the door appeared for all three of them. Rowan watched them with glowing eyes. "A family that listens together," Rowan said. "That is rare." From that moment on, Elena's parents made small but meaningful changes. Daniel began teaching his students not just history, but care for the places they lived in. Clara started repairing old clothes instead of replacing them. encouraging others to do the same. And Elena became a bridge between the quiet world below and the busy world above. The underground light began to return, but Rowan warned them. For a while, life returned to something close to normal. Elena went to school, Daniel taught his classes, and Clara continued her sewing. The hidden room beneath the yard glowed steadily again, though Rowan warned that the balance was fragile. Then one afternoon, Daniel came home later than usual. "There's a meeting at the town hall tomorrow," he said as he set his bag down. "They're planning something." "What kind of something?" Clara asked. Daniel hesitated. "A development project. New roads, new buildings, and—" he looked toward the yard. "They've marked this area as part of it." Elena felt cold. That night, the underground room trembled slightly. The roots along the ceiling pulsed faster, and the light flickered. "They are forgetting again," Rowan said softly. "Not out of cruelty, but out of hurry." Elena sat on her bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit. "What if they destroy everything?" she asked her parents. Clara knelt beside her. "Then we speak. We explain, even if people don't listen right away." Daniel nodded. "History shows that change often begins with uncomfortable truth." Rowan appeared at the doorway of the hidden room that evening, quieter than ever. "If the ground is broken without care," Rowan said, "this place will fade completely." Elena clenched her fists. "Then we won't let them forget." At the town hall meeting, the room was crowded. Adults talked loudly, papers shuffled, and plans were projected onto bright screens. Elena sat between her parents, her feet barely touching the floor. When the discussion reached her neighborhood, Daniel stood up. He spoke about history, about old houses, about roots that went deeper than maps. Clara spoke next, about repair, about care, about keeping what still mattered. Some people listened, some did not. Then Elena raised her hand. The room grew quiet, surprised. She stood, her voice small but steady. "There's a place under our yard," she said. "It remembers us, and if we don't listen to places like that, we forget parts of ourselves." There was silence. Then someone laughed softly, but someone else frowned, and someone else nodded. The mayor cleared his throat. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "we should reassess." The project was changed, not canceled, but reshaped. The old houses stayed. The apple tree remained. New paths were planned around existing spaces instead of through them. No one spoke of hidden rooms or keepers of small things. But the ground sighed in relief. That evening, the underground room glowed brighter than Elena had ever seen it. "You did well," Rowan said, not by shouting, but by reminding years past. Elena grew taller. Her questions changed, but they never disappeared. The door beneath the yard appeared less often, but it never vanished completely. Rowan grew quieter, smaller, content. Daniel continued teaching, now known for lessons that stayed with students long after exams ended. Clara's work became famous not for fashion, but for meaning. And Elena learned something important, that families do not save the world by grand gestures. They do it by listening, by caring, by remembering small things. One evening, much later, Elena, now almost grown, opened her old bedroom window. The light fell just right, the dust still danced, the house still listened. She smiled, knowing that as long as someone was willing to hear the quiet, the world would never be entirely lost.